It's the Packet Thrower! Welcome to the channel!
Welcome back. So we can see the installation has completed. Everything is done successfully here. We can check the logs and see that it has ran through all the steps. And on our console that we have running, we can see that the AVH is up and running, and we have the host name for Nutanix 01, which is what I entered. And if we check our Nexus sessions, we can see our port channels are up on both switch 1 and 2. So if I do a show port channel summary, we can see that this is up here. And if I just copy this and put this on the other switch, we'll see that it's also up. So at this point, we can log into our Nutanix. And we can do that by going to the IP address we set for the cluster VIP. And then we use port 9440. And Prism is what Nutanix calls its web interface where we do our configuration. So if we sign in, it is going to have us change the password. So I'm just going to type in my usual. You can see there's some complexity requirements, so I'm going to hit enter. We'll accept this. It's going to let us know that the monitoring suite called Pulse is going to be enabled. We're going to say yes. You can turn it off if you have security concerns. So in here we can see a dashboard of things like our health, and we can see a summary of the VMs. I mentioned in the part 1 there that Nutanix will create a VM per node for the management. And we can see everything looks fine. If we wanted to drill down into health or whatnot, we could do so. And this is going to give us a mandatory tutorial thing that's going to load a simulation. And it basically is just going to let us know how to actually deal with things. Yes, thank you, Nutanix. That was lovely. So once it's done showing you how the simulation is, it's going to show us our actual page. So we can see here we have 3 hosts, and one of them is complaining that the NTP isn't working, but that's not a major concern for us right now. So anyway, on the dashboard, this just gives you a nice overview of a bunch of graphs. So what we can do is if we go over to storage and go through this there, we can see that in my cluster we have 11 terabytes of capacity, and we have 11.3 terabytes free, and we're only really using 60 megs. We can see here that we have 3 storage containers, and basically these are just simply essentially folders for partitioning off types of storage there. So we might make one for self-service VMs, and we might make another one for particular kinds. That just helps us organize things. So if we look at the storage pool, we can see the default one is created and it's allocated everything. We don't need to touch this, but if we wanted to, we could adjust it as we wanted to and rename it and such. So if I want to change the name, I guess go update, and we'll just say Tesla storage pool. So we can create multiple storage pools if we want to organize our data there. So for example, we might want a different storage pool to host a different platform storage to keep things separate, or you might want to do it administratively. Volume groups is more for presenting storage to other things there. We can see we can manage the initiators. And this is basically about iSCSI clients and stuff, but we don't need to get too deep into the storage. But now that's done, we can go over to network. And what we can see is it is showing us the existing VMs and the hosts, and it's trying to show us how all the switches are configured. But right now, it doesn't have any information about how to actually connect to the switches. So if we go over to settings, So what we can do here is tell Nutanix how to talk to our Nexus switches through SNMP, and it's going to try and discover what links are in use and whatnot there so it can give us a more complete network map. Now, last I checked, this doesn't quite work with the newer versions of Nexus, but we can give it a go just to see what happens. So what we can do is add an SNMP profile. So I'm just going to go ahead and add one. We'll call this Test Lab. We'll call this Test Lab SNMP read only. And this is my standard lab one, which is Meowcat read only. And we'll go save. And then we'll add a switch configuration, which if we check, we can just go ahead and use this IP here. Let's go want to know what Nutanix hosts are connected to the switch. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 240.101, 102, and 103. Then we'll use our SNMP profile, and we'll go save. I'll do the same thing for the other switch. And use the same profile. And I'm not actually sure if this is going to work, but we'll try it. So we'll give that a minute, and what we're going to do is go to network configuration, and we're going to create a network we can use for a VM. And we're just going to call this servers, and we'll get this a VLAN 251. Now if we want, we can have Nutanix be our IPAM. So if we check this, it is going to give us a bunch of information about how to allocate IPs. So we can say 10.11.251.0/24, the gateway. And then we can do some custom stuff there. Like we said, 10.11.200.11 was the DNS server. And then we can say testlab.com. Then the testlab.com for the domain. We don't have any TFTP here, but now we can go create pool, and we'll say 10.11.251.100, 10.11.251.200. And we can just leave this there. We can choose to override a DHCP server if we need to. Let's go save for this example. And now we have a network created. So if we go back to settings and then click on network. So if we go back here, we can see that it hasn't quite fully filled out everything yet. But if we click on unknown switch, we can see that it is learning some stuff there, but it's still missing some information and it's looking for some other switches. But you get the idea of the feature, it just draws out the map. I might circle back on this later if there's time, but it's not a huge deal. So this is the this is the VM page. Gives you a snapshot of all the VMs and some relevant information, but nothing's really running. It by default won't show you the controller VMs, so it doesn't mess up your statistics. So what we can do is upload an image that we can use. Unfortunately, because this is based on KVM, we can't just use an OVA to get things up and running. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go down to Settings and Image Configuration. So because this is KVM, we can upload a QEMU file. So I'm just going to see what I have available to me. And as it happens, I have a FortiGate 2KL image that I can use. So we're just going to play with that. And we're just going to call this FortiGate. And we're just going to put this on the default container. And go save. So now it's just going to upload that image up to the Nutanix. And then we can use that to create our VM. So we can see in the corner here, it is going pretty quick because the FortiGate image is pretty small. And there we go. So now we can go back over to, and now we can go to the VM page and create a VM. And we're just going to call this FortiGate 01. Give a description. This is a test VM. We can let it know what time zone it is just for tracking. And we're just going to say that this is 1 CPU and 2 gigs of RAM because I'm not going to license this FortiGate there, so that's the default values. Oops, if I type that in the right spot. So that would be 1 core, and there we go. So now what we can do is remove the CD-ROM. We don't need it. We're going to add a disk, and we're going to say clone from the image service and pick the FortiGate. So we'll go add. We can choose if we want the legacy BIOS or if we want the UEFI. We're not going to bother because it's just a network appliance. And I briefly mentioned volume groups there, but we don't need to get into that. So what we're instead going to do is add a NIC. And we have our VLAN here. And we're just going to say this is 10.11.251.234. Why not? So basically, because I never set up a DHCP pool or whatnot there, we just have to statically set it because we have the IPAM enabled. So we're just going to pick on this. And then we can do some other stuff there, like we can pin this to a host if we want host affinity, or we can run a script if we want to do more provisioning stuff. But we're not going to bother with that, so we're just going to go save. And what we're going to see, if we go over to table, is that our FortiGate is being created. So if I click on this, I should be able to power it on. And oops, I said that this has 2 terabytes of memory. That's probably a little bit too much. So let me just update this. And what I meant to say was 2. This is why you always have to pay attention when you're writing this there. It's gigabit, not megabit. So we'll say save. And now we'll try powering this up. And then if I click on Launch Console, we have our FortiGate. So I can log in with this. And if we do get system interface, we can see that it has allocated the IP address I wanted, because basically the FortiGate is set up for DHCP and the Nutanix is presenting the field I chose there. If I wanted to make this more automated, then I could add more of the DHCP pools and whatnot, but we don't get too buried away in this kind of stuff. And then if I wanted to, I could do execute ping, and I should be able to ping the default gateway. I can. And let's just see if this can actually get online. I'm not quite sure about this lab environment. And that's fine. I never set up the lab to be able to reach everything through my VPNs. But the idea is we spun up a virtual machine pretty painlessly. And from here, we can do the standard stuff you'd expect. We can mount an ISO. Though I removed the CD-ROM drive, we can do a control-delete if we want to reboot it. We can take a screenshot if we want to, and we can reboot it there. So it's not quite as functional as, say, the VMware options there, but it's enough for you to get things going there, and it's certainly a bit more flexible than the standard KVM. So, for example, if we wanted to do things like clone the VM, we just need to pick this. And we'll just say this is going to be FortiGate 2. And then we can just go save. And we can see that's cloned it right away, so we can do our thing. If we wanted to, we could also take a snapshot. And we could use that to restore if we blow up our virtual machine. And of course, if we want to move this around, we can just say migrate. And we can let it pick one, or we can manually say, hey, I want this on Nutanix 3. And what we should see in a second is that this will start moving over to Nutanix 3. And this is thanks to app mobility, which we talked about briefly when we were going over the whiteboard side of the conversation. If we wanted to, we could also choose to deploy Prism Central, and this is a way of managing several different instances of Nutanix there. So if you have several different Nutanix blocks there, instead of managing them individually there, you can have some central management. And the nice thing about this is you just click the deploy button and it will automatically download it for you, and it's going to select the version that you are already running. So it's going to hit download. And then depending on your scale, you can do either single if you have, and then you pick the size there. So you can do a scale out if you have a lot of VMs, as in between 5 and 25,000. But if you have less than that, then you can just do single, where it's going to do the single one. And then we can just call this Prism Central 01. And we'll put this in the default container. And we can pick our sizing as we want to. We have our network, so we're just going to leave it there. And it's going to say that this network is going to be 10.11.251.200. Then it is going to go ahead and download everything. So that's the basics of the Nutanix Hypervisor. We've created some VMs. We uploaded some images for storage. And we've looked at some of the basic features. We check our network map. We can see that it's starting to fill in some information there, but it's not complete there, and there is a bug notice on this there, so I wouldn't be worried too much about that particular feature, but it's still a nice idea to see it working. Aside from that, there's a couple other things we can look at. So there is a REST API for your automation. And so from here we can use this on our scripts if we want to get information on, say, our clusters. We can go ahead and do that. And like a lot of solutions there, we'll give you some references so you can see what's going on. We can try it out directly without having to use Postman. So we can see there it's gave us the curl command that we can use. And it's giving us our resultant information. There is also what they call the Nutanix CLI, and what this is lets you configure things through a command line interface. So to try this out, all we need to do is convert our password so we can type it in. So I'm just going to create a variable, and we're going to use the convert to secure string. Convert to secure string, there we go. And then we're going to say the password is something I store because I actually like this password and I don't want to share it with you. And then we just go as plain text and we need to force it. So now if I go connect Nutanix cluster, and then we need to go server, which is 11.241.200, and then username is admin and password is this. And also we need to tell it to ignore the self-sign certs. So we're just going to say yes. And now we're in here, we can manage this just like we can with VMware. So we can say things like get Nutanix cluster, we've got our information, and if we wanted to do something more useful, we could say something like get the network information, and we can see our servers. We could create a new network if we wanted to, so we could go get help new NTNX network examples, or not. So instead what we'll do is we'll just figure it out. So we'll say new NTX network, give it a name, we'll say test02, VLAN ID will be 252, and it's happy with that there. So if we scroll up, we see we've created a new network with line. So gives you a lot of flexible options there. We'll check our Prism Central to see if that's working. So we'll go back over here and we'll go home, and we can see it's still deploying there. But basically that's all it is. It's a decent system. Next time I'll probably do the same thing, but we'll run ESX instead and show you some of those differences. But until then, I'll see you next time.